Hello, good afternoon. So we're back again for part three with our discussion with Professor Orlando Patterson. Professor Patterson, you are telling us about an Indian businessman. You may continue this story.
Well, we began to discuss the question of the labor shortage, apparent labor shortage for certain jobs in the tourist industry and the construction industry. And he said, I said, was it a shortage of skills? I mean, need to train more and so on. So he immediately cut me off and said, no, the problem is very simple. They're underpaid. And I was quite startled by that. And he began to explain to me. He said, look, in the restaurant and in the tourist industry, and apparently he's worked in major positions, executive positions in not just Jamaica, but in Cayman, in other parts of the hemisphere. And he said, and he just happened to be a very enlightened person. And he said, look, there's a simple metric you can use, which takes account of differences in levels of development to assess the degree to which a group of people are adequately paid or underpaid. And that metric, he said, is the percentage of the price of the good, which goes to labor. So he says, look, I was eating at his restaurant, and he said, all right, you're going to pay me X amount for this meal I served you. What percentage of this amount you're giving me goes to labor cost? And he said, using that metric, he said the average for most of the tourist-based economies, as well as the United States, is 22%. Okay, you're going to give me X dollars when you finish this meal, 22% of that will be labor cost, average. Some are lower, some are higher. He said, you know what it is in Jamaica? He said it's 15%, a 7-point difference. And I was pretty shocked by that. And he said, there's something else I have to tell you, especially related to the tourist industry and the restaurant industry. He said, in Jamaica, in most hotels, especially the all-inclusive, tips are not allowed. But part of the selling point of the tourist the industry is you pay one amount and no tips. But of course, we know that in most countries, the largest proportion of the income of people who serve in restaurants and waiters and so on comes from tips. Jamaicans are denied that. And he said this is true in several other Caribbean countries, they allow tips because the unions insist on it and it's just part of the laws. So, he said, you look at a place like Cayman, not only is the ratio of their income, which goes of the price, which goes to workers more in line with other areas, closer to the 22. But tips are allowed. So I was just astonished by that. And then he said another thing, look, COVID, in a way, wised up the Jamaican workers because they always had to supplement their income by what we call scuffling or doing extra things, have a little garden patch or so on. And that's what COVID did. By laying off so many workers, they were forced to rely more on these resources, and they found that they could survive quite well without the going back to what were sort of being underpaid, that they can barely survive on what they earn. And that was such a revelation to me that I have to check this out some more. But it was stunning, and my question to him is what. I thought we had a great labor union tradition. And he just laughed and said he thought the unions were not doing their job. So anyway, that's just I link that up as a historical sociologist immediately with our past, in which, again, is the same old story. Instead of adopting the principle of enlightened self-interest and knowing that you'll get even better service if you pay people a livable wage. This goes back to the old story of relying more on a more exploitative wage, similar to relying more on a more exploitative approach to your slaves or to your colonial workers than did the more enlightened slave owners and capitalists in other countries. So that, well, that seems to be, a tradition we have, that you pay the workers as little as you can in order to maximize your own earnings. And we, unfortunately, if what he told me true, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be true, because this man is a quite successful businessman who owns several restaurants and who, as I said, used to work as the chief, executive in several operations. Can you believe that?
I can. Look, the average salary in the US is over 51,000 US dollars a year. If you earn 1,000 US dollars a year, you are underpaid in America. The average Jamaican is not earning over 150,000 a month.
Yeah, you can't live on that.
Exactly. So Jamaica is a low wage economy and it's a low human capital economy, again, because of government policy and the private sector. Entrepreneurs in Jamaica are telling the government to invest in apprenticeship. In other countries, business people build the apprenticeship programs. They build the venture capital programs. They are the private sector.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because, as you know, I've been working on education and development, and now we're on phase 2 of our the commission, which is looking at technical and TVET, technical and vocational training, which has been in the hands of Heart. And there are issues there, serious issues, which we're now examining and hoping to come up with some solutions for by September. And yes, what you said is interesting in that in several other countries, most notably Germany, the business community does not wait on the government to provide them with the skilled labor they need. They've taken the initiative in fact, training and also, of course, training their own skilled labor. And they have their own schools and so on, and then providing them with afterwards. Now, it's possible for us to do that. We have an experiment going on right now in which one enlightened company is training workers in coding and guaranteeing them jobs afterwards on the German model. If this model works in there, then it may set a precedent. It is perhaps not accidental that the person who is starting this is himself an Indian gentleman who's become a Jamaican. Why our Jamaican entrepreneurs have not seen the wisdom of doing this, even though the most enlightened capitalist country in the world, Germany, has done this. So, by the way, have other countries such as Denmark, which is one of the countries going to model, and also another European country, which was among the last to really develop significantly, and which, even as a graduate student, was still a third world country. Ireland. Ireland, as was a poor country and undeveloped, even as when I lived in England in the 60s and so on. In Ireland is developed significantly, and it emphasizes strongly this sort of training, TVET training, and in which the business community plays an active role in the training and in guaranteeing jobs for trained people. So we have, I'm hoping that we will be able to move in that direction. So we will see.
And we are talking about the business community, but what about the intellectual community? I'm a big fan of Joel Mokyr, and he has like a million pieces on the Industrial Revolution. And there's one piece in particular that's quite interesting, the role of intellectuals in economic growth. Intellectuals are not only writing articles, they too are also disseminating information and building institutions, primarily the think tank, or what we in Jamaica would just call a research organization. I'm a
Yes.
young person. I used to read Jamaican newspapers every day. I no longer do so. And to be honest, Professor
Why
Patterson,
not? Wait, why not? You gotta read your local newspaper.
yeah, I stopped. Let me tell you why I stopped. So many people don't know this, but the Gleaner is actually older than the New York Times. And for
It is.
yes,
It is 8 years. Yes, I know. I happen to know this.
yes, and for a long time, Jamaica produced some really serious journalists and opinionated writers, many distinguished people. But today, when I read local newspapers, I'm being entertained. When I want to be entertained, I watch TV. When I'm reading the opinionated section, I want serious stuff. So we no longer have like even the late Norman Gervan. I didn't agree with him on all issues because Norman Gervan was on the left, but he was intellectually was sharp and he was also balanced. Again, some people might not know this, but Norman Gervan studied the economy of the 70s quite carefully, and Gervan and others have actually attributed some of
The-
the downfall to the policies of the administration, but many people don't know that he was that objective. But today, reading Jamaican newspaper is just so sad. We have devolved quite a bit.
It is a bit pessimistic reading it because all you read about is crime, but they do have other kinds of analysis. But anyway, I just have to mention to you that Norman and myself graduated in the same class from UWI, and we went up to Britain together and shared um, flat together for our graduate days. You know, we were very close. We sort of grew apart a bit afterwards, but you know, toward the end of his came back. So I knew him very, very well. Yeah. Anyway. Um,
Yeah, but the intellectuals do play a role in
oh,
shaping society, and an important role.
yeah, very. I agree with you as an intellectual. Obviously, I do. And what do you think is lacking here? I mean, you are on the scene. Um, how do you think our intellectuals have not lived up to their contribution to development? You know, one of the things I can say coming out of the research we did for the commission is that we, the business community has complained that UE has not been sufficiently attentive to the specific set of needs of the private sector, that a lot of people are uh, being produced who do not, you know, have the kind of skills they want. I
Let me give a quick example, Professor Patterson. So, dancehall music. I'm not a big fan of dancehall, but if you're a serious student of sociology, dancehall reveals the cultural nuances of Jamaica. So you can use dancehall as a medium to educate people about Jamaican culture, its history. Dancehall is also a commentary on political institutions and envy. So envy is a recurring leitmotif in dancehall, and Boris Gershman of the American University, he has done several studies on the links between envy and economic growth. Someone like yourself who's interested in state legitimacy, you can listen to dancehall. That's also another important avenue to
yeah,
comment on the intricacies of the Jamaican state. Academics at UWI do study dancehall, but it is primarily to rile up the masses. It is not your account of dancehall. So when I'm reading your articles, I just love them. I'm a big fan. I am not interested in being entertained. Everything is about entertainment and just feeling good.
yes, boy, the popular culture is intriguing. There's so many good aspects, so many bad aspects, but I myself am a bit bothered by the trends. It's the bacchanalial trends. I have no problem with people enjoying it. the lyrics of dancehall leave me worried sometimes. Misogyny, and not to mention the homophobia and so on. So, it's what do you do in a situation like that? I mean, as believers in freedom, in any kind of sense, but it's what it tells us about the state of the culture, and it's bothersome. I don't know where to go with that because, as I said, I don't believe in censorship.
Neither do
I,
I.
I believe in trying to question why it is that the culture has turned it as, just comparing the music of roots reggae with what goes on in the dance hall. Or people will jump on me immediately that, I'm being old fashioned.
No, you're that,
Uh,
and that's the problem. Nothing wrong with being old-fashioned. Common decency should still exist. That's the problem. So instead of analyzing dancehall to reveal insights about Jamaicans and more broadly human nature, people in Jamaica will analyze dancehall and say, "Oh, it is empowering women and it's subversive," and they celebrate the fact that dancehall is subversive. But there's a time and place to be subversive.
yes, yes, absolutely. So, well, I don't know. I frankly, much that I don't know what to do with that situation because you can't stop it. It's a reflection of where, and it's tied up to our past in significant ways. It's a kind of escapism, in fact, in the absence of people being motivated to do other things. If again, get back to this underpaid, what do you do with your time? You sort of seek the best way you can enjoy yourself, rather than sitting down and thinking of how can I better improve myself. But if you're not motivated because of the low wages you're getting, it's almost natural that you find other ways of making life meaningful. And dancehall becomes the way of making life meaningful for underpaid workers or people who are not working at all. So, um, you have to be careful that you don't sound too conservative in a situation like this. But it's bothersome. It's bothersome, and that's about as far as I can go because I love the music, and I don't want to say or do anything whatsoever which suggests any kind of crude censorship. My reflection is on why it is that it has taken the turn that it has, and it's very saddening.
This present Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, is hitting the right notes culturally, but is he brave enough to really usher in new change? That's a different debate because recently Holness said that in Jamaica, some men will boast that they have fathered many children even when they do not invest in their
Yeah,
children.
yeah.
That's an important issue, and we have a prime minister who's making these points. But then, will he be brave enough to stand up to the masses?
I
I have
think so. I think so. I greatly admire the prime minister. I think easily, I don't know, maybe one of the best in terms of intelligence and in terms of character and in terms of his willingness to take on important and difficult issues. So far, I've been very impressed, shall we say. I think we're lucky. And he's young, he's relatively young. So I think we have a really exceptional leadership right now between himself and I've written on this. I don't make a secret of it. Between himself and Nigel Clark, who, as you know, talk about is an intellectual as well as a policy and statesman. A Rhodes Scholar with um, a doctorate in mathematics. You can't get a more intelligent person and educated person than that. So I think we're fortunate right now in the leadership we have. But of course, they can do just that much with what they have in terms of people they're leading and in terms of the lower levels of leadership. And I am a little concerned by the level of corruption, which I've seen. Now, as you know, we rank um, depressingly low for a country at our level of development. in the Transparency International Index. And I keep hoping that we'll get better. And I'm sure the Prime Minister is very distressed by the frequency, the relative frequency in which we read about scandals. And so it bothers me. That bothers me very badly. But to answer your question, I wouldn't be working for the administration. As he knows, and as you may know, I grew up as a PNP person. My mother and father were staunch PNP. There's a biography coming out on me in which I discuss the fact that as a 6-year-old and older, my mother used to be canvas for the PNP. She loved old Manley, Manley Senior, Norman Manley. Her two great heroes who come in her pantheon just under the Lord were Norman Manley, you see, and Bishop Gibson. And she used to take me canvassing with her. I'd bring a little bag with all the TNT leaflets and so on. So, and as you know, I was an advisor to Michael for many years. But, I put politics aside when it comes to policy and what I can do for the country. And I am quite impressed with the top leadership of the country. And you're right. I mean, it's the Prime Minister is taking very bold stands. But, you can do just that much with the resources that the country are leading, with the entrepreneurs. And he's a firm believer in capitalism, as you know.
Yes.
And you can just do that much. And I think he's doing as good a job as is possible. That's so from my experience with him. And as I said, I wouldn't be working for the government.
Yes, if you didn't have confidence in him.
Very, very much so.
But you see, Andrew Holness is the Prime Minister, he's a politician, and the political class must be supported by the intellectual class. So recently, Andrew Holness rightfully said the NHT is not a welfare organization. It's either you're in business or you're not in business. The NHT should be building homes for contributors. Some people would prefer the NHT to build homes for poor people, what they call social housing. And the NHT is already investing in social sector. So for instance, there's a disability grant. A big problem that I have with Jamaica is the welfare-oriented mentality and not the wealth-oriented mentality. Everything's about the poor. If you're poor, I want the poor to be uplifted. Marcus Garvey said that poverty is a form of indignity. And I think that we celebrate poverty in this country.
Yeah, well, we have to, ultimately, we get back to discuss earlier. Ultimately, what we have to do is to help the poor to help themselves.
Yes.
Okay, and that's the role of God. I mean, I think we also have to have a floor in terms of earnings and so on, below which we consider it below human dignity to have our population living below that level. People should not be living like pigs in, shacks made of cardboard and so on. You shouldn't have a situation in which 6, 7 people, you drive around Jamaica, you see, 4, 5, 6, 7 people coming out of one room, in which people don't know what they're going to eat each day. No matter what they are, there should be, every civilized society should have a floor below which you don't ask, well, are you responsible or not? And as a human being, you're entitled to, have 1 or 2 meals, at least 2 meals a day and so on. And by the way, I see one of the things I like about the feeding program, which didn't exist when I was a student. My God, I mean, what a difference it would have made. As I think of the times when, because I come from a poor working class family, time to time you're concerned, you reach a point where you want to know how you're going to feed your kid, in this case me, in a given day. You shouldn't have that. And one of the things I'm very happy about is the feeding program, which ensures at least 1 good meal a day for kids. And as I discovered, as reading about and pleasantly surprised to discover that some schools have been able to stretch um, the school feeding budget to include breakfast and lunch. 2 good meals a day, essential for learning, for brain development. So I think basically I'm in agreement with you about the basic principle being to help the poor to help themselves. But I also think there should be a floor below which you say, no matter, no excuses, no issue of responsibility. People should not starve, and people should have a certain minimum level of dignity as human beings, which requires, that you get to the housing thing, have at least 2 rooms, huh? And who builds it? Now, I, coming out of my experience working way back now in the 70s, where I was primarily involved with low income living. That's what I did. I didn't get much into the politics, but I worked for Manley and primarily in his South Central Kingston area, introducing a program known as sort of, meeting the basic needs, urban upgrading, which moved away from building housing schemes, which is iniquitous in the sense that you're spending a large amount of money to benefit a small amount of people, and you displace a large number. But that approach, which was, quite progressive and popular among some countries, developing countries, it is hard to pursue because it's very difficult for leaders, for politicians to resist building housing schemes because the political benefits are so very great. So as I explained in my book, The Confounding Island, that was one battle I lost, even with Manley, who, even though he was in agreement in principle with what I was saying, I was able to do a lot because my approach was, bringing basic services so that people um, can have water in their home, build standpipes in every yard must have a standpipe, even if it's not inside the house itself, and that basic health services and meeting basic needs is an approach which, while is more rational, is not politically attractive. And so while I did do some good with my basic shops, which is another thing I did, in which I encourage local entrepreneurs by providing them at minimal cost the kind of the 11 basic foods that Jamaican ate so that they could sell it at a low price. So at a lower price. My basic needs approach was, I thought, one of the big successes. But so that was part of this basic strategy, that there should be a floor below which no human being, considering the essential dignity of a human being, should fall. But at the same time, we're in full agreement. Helping the poor to help themselves should be the strategy, not just handouts. Total agreement with that. And I think this is where education becomes
Yes.
absolutely critical, right? The best way to help the poor to help themselves is to provide them with the best possible education they can get and with the skills they can get. So that's why I'm emphasizing this now as my primary interest, and it will remain my last primary interest, as we try to help poor and others to help themselves.
Because the problem of missing children is not new. Some people are saying that COVID has compounded the problem, and I agree. But some years ago, Don Robotham wrote an article, and in an interview, Professor Robotham, the professor was saying that some Jamaican students, they do really well, and then by grade 9 they begin to fail, and many of these students, after a while, they leave school. So the problem of missing children in Jamaica is quite old.
Well, you see that in our report. Missing children is 18% of the primary school population. It's one of the highest among countries at our level of development. One of the highest. And it's a big problem. Where are they? Why are they missing? Some of them are missing because they don't have the food, they don't have the money to pay for the school uniform or the shoes and so on. Some of them don't have the money to pay for the transportation. And by the way, you would be amazed at how far children travel to go to school.
I'm not amazed.
Yesterday I did my first day of my tour of the schools and so on, and I had a wonderful time talking to school children. And I discovered in Maypen, we're based in Maypen, we look at the high school there the the Maypen primary school. The I spoke to several of the kids and realized that some of them are coming from as far as Chapelton and Moco and so on to go to schools in Maypen. And I asked them why. They said because they prefer schools there. It shows you, by the way, a high level of motivation. But one of the persons was from JIS with us. Said he used to go to school in Maypen from Mandeville. I was up in Lime Hall a few days ago, and I gave a young kid, is about 14 or so, a drive. I was deep in the bush there, and we are going up back to Ochoria. So I drove him up to the center of Lime Hall. So we got to talking, and he goes to a high school, he said, which is way over on the other side of Ochoria's. But the fellow from Mandeville, he said it took him 2 hours each way, 4 hours a day he was driving. So on the one hand, it shows the incredible level of motivation which youngsters and their parents have in going to school, and our need to provide spaces closer to them is great. But the desire for education is there. About talking to these, I was very, very inspired, especially talking to the elementary school kids in Maypen. And by the way, I have to give you a little personal, add a personal note here. The I had thought that my old elementary, I went to Maypen Elementary School.
No, I didn't. I know you went to Casey.
Yeah, but just as important, we now know that primary and pre-primary are even more important than high school. But anyway, a couple of years ago, I went back to see if I could see my old school. And I was a bit, both surprised and a little disappointed in the sense that I saw a brand new school, set of buildings. And I thought, oh, well, obviously they must have torn down my old school building. So I went back yesterday, and the headmaster said to me, no, man, this building is still there, which you went to school at. And sure enough, it's there. They didn't tear it down. They now call it the White Man Building in honor of my headmaster at the time, which was Teacher Whiteman, who was not Burchell Whiteman, but Burchell Whiteman's father was my headmaster. They call it the White Man Building. And there it was, just as it was in the 1940s when when I went there. I took so many pictures of it. It was a real, and same thing. I was able to walk into the classroom that I sat in first class. So that was a real pleasure. But more importantly was how impressed I was with the students, and at both levels of the system. We have a very motivated group of kids, but there are 18% were clearly not motivated, or for reasons other than motivation, possibly, likely having to do with the parents' inability to provide them with the simple needs such as shoes, school uniform, and just provide them with a good breakfast in the morning. That 18% is among the highest in the Caribbean. Again, you want to make the comparison with Barbados. Barbados, zero. Number of kids who should be in primary school who are not. So that's we have a big problem. But the problem, but as I said, I've got to say that I was very impressed with the kids I spoke with. Man, they were so bright.
What grade level?
What grade level? I went to the primary school, and I spoke with the 6th grade, and I also spoke with earlier grades. But and I went to, the high school there, and I went into several classes. So it was a good experience, very good experience. And I came away feeling that, we can do things. And I'm hoping that we will. I'm hoping that we will. So there, I'm not pessimistic at all, especially after yesterday. And I'm looking forward to the rest of my visit. So again, tomorrow we're going to visit several of the schools, and I'm going all around the country.
So where are you now? Are you in Kingston today?
I'm in Kingston today, yes.
And which parish are you heading for tomorrow?
Tomorrow we let me see. We're going to be in Kingston tomorrow. Let me see. We'll be visiting several schools in the Kingston area, and we'll hopefully. Well, I'm going to my old school, KC, and we're going down to Tivoli Gardens, and so it's a tight schedule. Yesterday we went to Mandeville too to check out the church teaching college there. This is an interesting experience. We have a lot of institutions. One of the things which we have to be careful about, though, is what exactly the institutions are doing, and that we don't have too much in terms of overlap, which is an issue, which it seems to me pay attention to. There is a bit of what's called mission creep. A lot of the institutions are aspiring to become universities, which may be better, serve the public if they.
Well, Professor Patterson, unfortunately, I have less than 1 minute left, so we have to wrap up.
Very good, very good. It's just good talking with you, man.
Yes, that's been a pleasure.
All right, so take care.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.